In today's video, I would like to take a look at one of my favorite scenes in Chernobyl. I'm very surprised with this HBO miniseries. It just came out of nowhere, and it has quickly become one of the best series of the year. It's a show built like a hard sci-fi story, with existential elements from cosmic horror and disturbing imagery from body horror movies. And yet, it's not fiction at all. It's a tragic page out of our less revisited chapters of our human history, filled with people facing inhuman situations and having to make unprecedented and impossible choices. I would love to indulge in a longer in-depth analysis, but for now, let's focus in on one scene at the end of episode 2, Please Remain Calm. At this point in the story, 3 engineers have volunteered to go beneath the recently exploded nuclear reactor to open the sluice gate, draining a pool of water to avoid an even bigger catastrophe that could have wiped out half of Europe. It's a very tense, surreal, and nerve-wracking scene that makes you feel like you're watching a horror movie. 3 men going into dark territory, facing an unknown and invisible threat. So how do you create such an effective scene on the page? Well, I find that the writer Craig Mazin manages to bring out the true horror aspects by playing around with 3 elements: space, sound, and light. If you want to read the script, I placed a link down in the description so you can have it as a reference. Now, let's see why this scene is so well made. What I would imagine this scene is trying to do is to make us feel the same confusion, disorientation, and fear felt from the actual people that had to complete this very hard task. But the writer has to keep himself restricted to a certain reality, so he can't put something that might seem too outlandish just to get an easy fear response from us. Or he can't be so restrained that we don't feel the tension coming from the divers. We have to be both worried for the characters and feel like we're following them into the dark corridors. To do so, we can only start with the tools at our disposal and stay true to the story. The first tool would be the use of space. So, we start with the location, and this specific area is a place nobody wants to be in. The divers and the audience enter this location knowing there is a serious amount of radiation waiting for them. We already start with a bit of tension working in our favor, and a nagging question: will this actually work? The silhouettes of the 3 men are stark against the white rectangle of light in the opening. They step into darkness, and the door seals behind them with a low, echoey boom. They're sealed in now. They are now isolated from the outside world, left alone in this dark and unwelcoming space. Another thing we can see is the introduction of 2 items. Then, light. 2 torch beams cut through the air, reflecting in the swirling particles of smoke and dust. And Baranov holds out the dosimeter, points it down the stairs. The needle wobbles to the right. The light and the dosimeter are 2 other tools at the writer's disposal, but more on that later. As the characters progress down the path trying to find the pipe that will lead to their objective, the writer makes sure we know they're running out of space by showing the intricacy of the location. It's steep, narrow, the passageway, tight, low, a claustrophobic maze of pipes and electrical cabling. They duck their heads to go by. Also, by the amount of water surrounding them. The 3 move through the duct. The water comes up to their ankles here. Light bobs in the darkness as they round the bend, coming towards us. The water is deeper now, up to their shins. Water seeping in from the cracks in the tunnel wall. It's rising all around them now, coming up to their knees. The rising water helps create a sense of urgency, reminding us that they are running out of time. The growing complexity of the location shows the characters' confusion. The pipes are bending and crossing over each other. The men stop, can't find the one they need. Which way? The next important element is sound, but you'll notice that there are a few things absent in this scene. The first, only noticeable on the screen, is that there isn't much of a soundtrack. The second is that there is no dialogue, meaning the show doesn't resort to music to sell the fear felt in the scene, nor do we have characters verbally expressing it. So how do you create an atmosphere of horror in this situation? If there is no dialogue, that means communication between the characters is limited. Something like giving each other directions is reduced to gestures, like pointing or pushing. But that also means that all the sound you will hear becomes very important, like the diver's breath. Since we can't really see them emote, saying something like, "they seem scared," won't make much sense, since they are covered from head to toe, and it would feel like an easy way out. So in this case, the breathing can be used as an indicator of the diver's rising tension. No sound but their breath, and the occasional groaning of the building above them. Their breathing gets heavier as they slosh through the rising water. Their breathing growing faster and louder. Unlike space that's being reduced, there's a steady increase of sound, like the one coming from the dosimeter. At first, we hear a low grainy noise in the background, but as they keep going into the water, the sound erupts into a cacophonous screech that fills the ears of the divers. The needle rises. The more water, the higher it goes. It serves to disorient the characters that can no longer think straight and aren't sure where to go, and it disorients the audience, making us question what will happen next. It becomes a grating, omnipresent soundtrack that reminds us that the monster is here now, and it grows larger as the sound gets louder. And now we're left with the last element, light. The only light source in this pitch-black environment are the two lights being carried by Ananenko and Bespalov, which makes the search for the right path very confusing because the amount of space can only be determined by the amount of light they have, which isn't a lot. He turns back to Ananenko and Bespalov and sees them both moving their lights over the three possible paths to take, trying to make sense of the maze of the pipes. The water rises, the dosimeter rises. The light is the only thing that keeps them moving forward, because everything else is moving against them. So what if you take this away? Ananenko's torch goes dead. They stop, turn to him. He hits it, but it's dead, fried. And now, the next one. Bespalov's torch flickers. The three men stare at it. We can only see their eyes through the goggles of their masks. That's enough. Terror. Please. No. Confusion and disorientation are replaced by unbridled fear. They know they'll soon be left in the darkness, without having anyone come and get them. As the light is taken away, so is space. No walls, no floor, no direction. We are only left with sound. Just the sound of three men lost in the rising water, and their breathing growing faster and louder until it's too much to bear. And black. We are left with nothing. One by one, the writer uses these important elements against the characters and corners them into an uncertain ending. I think this scene does a good job of teaching writers how to use all the tools at their disposal that come organically from the story. You don't need cheap tricks to create tension, urgency, or horror. You just have to find a way to use what the story gives you, and in doing so, at least in this case, you also respect the source material. Thank you for taking the time to watch our video. We invite you to like, share, and subscribe if you haven't done so yet. Our next videos will be coming out in October, and we have something very interesting prepared for that whole month. We will be introducing our 4-part series of videos called Elements of Horror. Make sure to set your notifications for it. Today's musical composition was made by Eduardo Gonzalez. If you like his work, you can find his information down in the description. If you wish to support our channel, please check out our Patreon page. Until next time.